My name's Ben Gledhill. I'm the... kiss that down a little bit. That's echoing. Yeah, is that, it's just a little bit echoey, that's all. Okay. So I'm the head of talent acquisition for Sofology. Some of you probably know us as CSL or Sofology back in the day. You already probably know us as, let's go to him, Neil the Sloth. He's taking a little bit of a backward seat these days, but I can go into a bit detail later on. So when I was invited here today, I thought I'd do it a little bit differently. At Sofology, we're going on an employer branding journey ourselves. And I really wanted to kind of pass on some of the basics that I've learned over the past kind of 12 to 18 months around employer branding and the principles. So you can actually go away tomorrow, next week, or whenever and actually do some of this stuff. Or if you're already in the middle of an employer branding journey, a little bit of a refresher course, or you can see how other organisations are doing it. So some things that we'll cover. First things first, obviously, why, what is an employer brand and why it's important. The foundations, the EVP or the employer value proposition. You've probably heard that phrase a few times, so we'll dig into that a little bit more. How do we communicate employer brand? So all the different steps in the communication life cycle, and some quick wins, so the things that you can actually go away start kicking off tomorrow. Hi, Neil, again. So first things first, what is an employer brand? So very simply, it's the perception and experiences that is held by both internal and external stakeholders of your organisation or as an employer. I think the best way that I've heard it is it's what people say about your company when you're not in the room. It represents everything that we do as either to a candidate or an employer. So from the way that we advertise a job, from our organisational values, to performance management, to how we manage our levers, all of that will be encapsulated in our employer brand. Whether you like it or not, and this is something that we had to find very quickly, you will have one somewhere. If you type in onto Twitter or Glassdoor, people will already be talking about you behind your backs. You might have control of that, or you might not have. So, as I said, it will already be out there. And the next thing, ultimately, it will stop a candidate joining your organisation, or if it's not going that well, potentially it might result in someone leaving as well. So that are the main reasons why it's so important. So another kind of way that I want to put this across, I was looking for a model to really get across the business reasons to why employer branding is so important. And to be honest with you, I was looking and I couldn't find one. So I thought I'd throw one together myself. So if an organisation has a good employer brand, the market perception gets better. That means that your number of applications that you get, and more importantly, the passive interest increases, and I think kind of Parsons did a really good bit on that earlier, which ultimately means you have a greater pool of talent to select from. So all of a sudden, because of your employer brand, your quality of hire improves. Now, because your quality of hire is improved, those guys are joining your business, they're greater engaged, higher levels of retention because of that engagement, and that results in obviously lower attrition. So all of a sudden, you have this brand loyalty where your employees have this emotional link with your organisation. So because of all that, moving on to the final stage, because they're staying longer, you have greater levels of internal mobility. Because they're staying longer and they're moving around more, their performance is increasing over time. And because they've really bought into the employer brand, the acceptance of things like the culture and values is a lot greater as well. So that results in your teams having greater productivity and profitability as well. So you can see from those three things alone, all of a sudden, employer branding has become kind of strategic and important. So because of all those things, all of a sudden, people at the C-level and at the board will realise that employer branding is a very important thing. All of a sudden, because of your employer brand, it's marking yourselves out as an employer of choice from other employers in the market. And because of that, because you have a strong employer brand, you can get the market's best talent. All of a sudden, you can future-proof, which means that your business becomes a lot more stable in the long term. Now, the longer that this goes on, you will start to get something which is known in the market as employer brand equity, which means, employer brand, you can actually start putting a price on it because it will reduce your cost for agencies, it will reduce your cost in leavers, and it's actually kind of worth something. I mean, I haven't got any costs to hand, but kind of companies like Microsoft, Google, Facebook, they rate their equity in the millions, if not billions. That is the cost of their people to their organisation. So I've kind of put up there some of the brands that we all kind of know and love. Top one is AstraZeneca, that hasn't came out that well. British Airways, BAE and Boots. This is taken from this year's Randstad Best UK Employer Brands. And the reason why they have that good employer brand is because of the thing that they have beneath it, which kind of discussed a little bit before, but that is the employee value proposition. Now, when I first started getting involved in this really confused me. It took me kind of a while to kind of get my head around it, but very simply, it is the people deal for working at an organisation in terms of what can you give Joe Bloggs in return for working at your organisation. It very much describes what the employee will give in return for the employee working at that organisation. And this is one thing that a few organisations that I've seen probably haven't kind of got it where it needs to be, but it should cover both what I call it tangible and intangible. So obviously tangible things are, the development opportunities, the salary, the benefits, that kind of thing. But the non-tangible things like the working environment, there's some fantastic organisations in Manchester that have spent a lot of money on their working environment, and that's really kind of propelled their employee brand straight to the forefront. So the components of an EVP, all these different factors will in some way, shape or form mould the EVP in terms of what you can offer. So I'm not going to go through all these in too much detail, but things like under the culture, do your employees actually pay attention to the values? Internal comms, are employees informed of everything that's happening? Moving down to career, on your website, you promise fast development. Well, can people develop that fast? That kind of thing. All the way around to benefits, reward, and the challenges as well. So all these things, in one way, shape or form, will come to create what we call the EVP, or the employee value proposition. So how do we find yours? So this is the journey that we've started. We're probably about 30% of the way, probably to finish in the middle of next year, so that kind of shows you the enormity of the project as a whole. This is a methodology that a lot of organisations and a lot of comms creative companies use. It's nothing massively new, but it's direct and it is straight to the point. So the first thing that you need to do is assess, what do we offer employees today? Where do we want to get to in terms of an employer? So for Sofology, we want to be seen as the leading omni-channel retailer in the UK for furniture. The next thing that you need to do is research. So, and this is probably the little bit where companies might get a little bit put off by, what is our current corporate brand? How does that link to our consumer brand as well? What's our current employer brand strength? Look at things like the Glassdoors of the world, the Twitters, the Facebooks, other bits and pieces like that. Look at things like exit interviews. What's our current workforce saying? This, for me, is the key bit, because this is where you will get the positive and the negative as well. So you need to make sure they don't sugarcoat any of the findings that you get. Review. So once we've got all the information of where we're at, you really need to start sitting down with the members of your current teams. And we've done this through focus groups. So we haven't cherry-picked employees throughout the organisation, because obviously it would be very easy to go and pick A-star performers. What we've done, we've randomly picked people throughout the business and simply said, what's it like to work at Sofology? Clearly, we had some very positive things. We also had some very negative things. So we've had to go away and address that before we come out with our overall EVP. It's really important to involve the senior leadership as well. We all know that our chief execs or CEOs will sell the dream, but actually when a candidate starts on Monday morning, that dream can be further away. So we have to make sure that they not only have their buy-in, but they agree with what we're saying as well. So the construct side of things, so this is where we will start to create what our EVP looks like. Now that could be a number of pillars in terms of why you would want to work at an organisation. It could be a number of statements, which I'll show some good examples in a moment, or it could simply be a tone of voice, which also I'll show. At this time, you really want to start to test what you're saying, what you're promoting your EVP as. Going back to being genuine, you don't want to say your organisation is really fast-paced if it's a tortoise pace or vice versa. So it's really important to test what you're saying before you go out to the actual market. Articulate. So this is where you'll be involving all the creative bods. So this is where once you have your messaging, or your tone of voice, or your pillars, this is where you'll be creating the message to the world, really. It could be on a website, it could be on a flyer, it could be how you write a job description. It's just how you will communicate to the world. And my favourite bit, because I'm a bit of a geek with data, it's really important to measure what you do as well. You know, are you seeing a rise in applications? Is your Twitter account gaining more followers? That kind of thing. And just kind of really get across that everything that we do really has to be consistent, authentic, and unique. Candidates now, especially millennials, bingo buzzword, they're getting really, really savvy now when it comes to the market, when it comes to employers, and they will know very quickly if your EVP is honest and on brand, or whether it's just a sales trick to get them through the door, and that kind of thing. So, what might an EVP look like? To be honest with you, it's very dependent on the organisation. I've seen some really good examples of straplines or statements. I think House of Fraser have done some really, really good stuff. If you look at some of the tech companies, I think Cisco have actually made an EVP manual or booklet, and that tells their employees literally the A to Z of their EVP and their employer brand. So when they are speaking to candidates, advertising jobs, whatever they do, everything goes from this main booklet. So I really wanted to kind of show some really good examples of messaging. So I've picked a few examples here. Now, Aldi has quite a similar environment to ourselves at Sofology. It's very fast-paced. You really need to be able to handle huge amounts of change, and sometimes that doesn't work for everybody. And I think it's not a secret that Aldi's graduate scheme is very, very fast-paced. So what they've done there, very simple messaging. It's tougher than you think. However, it turns out I am tougher than I thought. So what you're doing there, you're looking for that kind of emotional connect with people that are looking for quite a fast-paced environment. The next one, Dixon's Carphone Warehouse. They've recently, earlier in the year, merged, so they needed a message that would really bring both sets of people together. So they've gone for the two biggest pillars, people and tech. A very simple message, love people, love tech. And they're just really, really cool graphics as well. And the thing I really like about this is there's a human element to the photography that's being used. So again, they're humanizing their employer brand rather than getting professionals or models in, which takes away the authenticity of what you're trying to do. So into insurance. So the reason why I picked this one, kind of going in a little bit into detail, if you look at the tone of voice that they're using there, it isn't for everyone. You've got to be a roll up your sleeves and get stuck in type. They're admitting that there's a lot of change going on. It can be fast paced. It might frustrate people. However, because they've been really, really honest, they will be tapping into certain types of people. So yet again, they're being authentic, they're being genuine, and they're getting that message across. Another one, Costa. So I've already found this out recently, but Costa offer a really good barista training scheme, and they lose a lot of people to the likes of Pret, Starbucks, because people think it's not that cool. So when they redeveloped their EVP and their brand and their careers website, they really needed to get across that you are joining for a career, not just a role for 6 months. So they've used some quite emotive language, and they've really kind of got across that you are joining for a career, not just jumping ship down the line. And this is one of my favourite onesies, Amplifon. These guys obviously help with hearing aids and other bits and pieces, and they've really gone for that emotional link with the people that they're going to be helping. Life is for listening. Choose a career that brings sound to life, which I think is some really, really strong kind of emotive language that they've used. So we know what our EVP is now. We know some good examples. So how do we actually communicate that as part of our employer brand? So we all know the employee life cycle. Excuse the E that's on the other line. The employer brand should be communicated through every step of the employee life cycle. So if we put the EVP on top of that, all these orange boxes in some way, shape or form is how your employer brand will be communicated. So as I stated earlier, from the hiring collateral that you might hand out at a careers fair, to the tone of voice on the messaging on the career site, moving through to the candidate experience, candidate journey, orientation, right up until when someone leaves. I've seen so many organisations do some really, really good stuff with alumni, and I was reading that organisations now are actually including it in part of their attraction campaign, in terms of bouncing back, go and see the other side and then come back, and just to make sure that your employer brand is working and it is resonating in the way that you want it to. These are the key things it should be messaging. So things like your social media traffic, Glassdoor rating, number of applications, things like your candidate experience, succession planning, how many people are getting. All these separate things are different ways that you can tell whether your employer brand is or is not working. So you've got some very kind of factual statistics there to share with people. So who does what? Well, in my opinion, it should really start with us guys, really. You might be lucky to have a social media or a branding team within your section, or you might have to roll your sleeves up and do it yourself. But I think as talent acquisition specialists, we should be the ones driving it. We might ask marketing to help us, but we should be the ones that are driving it. Next, it's really important to get employer branding on the top table in terms of leadership or even an exec. I think going back to the previous model, because it is a strategic tool that an organisation should use, we should really have the attention of those guys. And if not, take it right down to basics. Show them, what happens on Glassdoor if we don't have a good employer brand. Show them how our candidate application numbers can go down if we're not going out to market with the right message. Really important one, this, organisation understanding and buy-in. The best companies that do employer branding have everybody involved. They're active on Twitter, they're active producers of content, they're at careers events, whatever it is, everybody's bought into the fact that if we improve our employer brand, not only will it attract better candidates, but it improves my life as an actual employee. So it's really important to get that buy-in. And last but not least, you won't be able to do everything yourselves. So I put their creative or media partner, because I think it's really important to leverage what you can do internally, cool little graphic there, and what you can do with a partner. And I put I'll expect the 50 quid in the post for putting the names at the back. Yeah. So yeah, there will be things that you can do yourselves, but you will have to probably at some point get some external help with the creatives, with the consultancy and that kind of thing. So, quick wins, things that you can start on tomorrow. So for me, the most important thing is engagement. Get out into the business and really get people engaged in what is employer branding, what are the benefits, and what are the positives that you can take from this. find out what makes it special, kick off that EVP journey, start holding some workshops, some focus groups, speak to your current teams and see why would somebody join Sofology rather than DFS, rather than Auto Trader or other organisations like that. Get hold of your social media. The reason why I've put a couple of kind of examples here is that it's surprising how many companies still aren't yet on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and on Twitter. And the reason why I've put Snapchat, and does anybody know what that icon is at the end? 10 points. Yeah, but you're cheating from social talent. I'm joking. Things like Snapchat and Periscope and even WhatsApp, they won't be kicking off next year. Companies have been using them for probably a couple of years now. So if you're not up on your social media usage, you need to get out there, get the content out there, and really start engaging with your passive talent, because that is how you'll get them sticky to your brand down the line when you want them to join. Glassdoor, it's that important. I've even given it its own bullet point. It does cause us a lot of pain as recruiters. It's not going away. I think the best companies that use this are the ones that will go on there, very open with its employees and say, do you know what, thanks for the feedback. It is something that we're working on, that kind of things. I think as an industry, we don't tell enough stories, and I think if a candidate can go onto Glassdoor and see, actually, they had this problem in 2016, but it's 2017, and they fixed it now, I think that's a more authentic story than just giving a little bit of a non-human HR message. So really make sure that your Glassdoor strategy is up to date. You've got people looking at it, uploading content, and making it make it user friendly. Moving on to content, no time like the present, everybody who's doing good things in this space are producing really good and insightful content, and the ones that are doing it really good, it's the actual brand advocates themselves doing it. It's not a marketing agency, it's not a photographer in a studio, it is Bob, software developer, or Matt in the marketing teams that are, really engaging with passive talent. And because passive talent can see the things that you're saying, and they can see it's genuine and insightful, that is when you will get the followers, you'll get the interest in your brand, and hopefully down the line you can change those leads into hires. I think the last point, keeping up with the career site revolution. This is our new career site that we kicked off. I think it was back in March or April. You'll notice the advert on the front. It's scary now how many new career sites are popping up in the UK. There's some fantastic work being done. So, whether it's yourselves who own the website, or it's IT, or an external agency, just make sure that it's fully up to date with all the information that they need. Content, and really let that messaging kind of scream out to potential candidates, really. And that's it. Question time.
Thank you very much.